Good morning, everybody. Right, now, an ex-police officer has won a legal challenge against a national policy requiring forces to record gender-critical views as non-crime hate incidents. That's right, you heard. Humberside Police visited Harry Miller in January 2020 because they had nothing better to do after a complaint over alleged transphobic tweets he made.
Yes, well, it was recorded on a national database as a non-crime hate incident, but the Court of Appeal ruled on Monday that the guidance was wrongly used and it had a chilling effect on Mr Miller's freedom of speech. Well, joining us in the studio is that very former police officer, Harry Miller, who won the legal battle yesterday. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Just explain to us what happened to you, because some people won't be familiar with it.
It was actually January 2019 when the police turned up at my place of work and said they'd had a report that my Twitter activity had caused great distress and posed a danger to the trans community of Immingham Dock. I don't know if you've ever been to Immingham Dock, but it's not the sort of place that you'd go looking for a trans community, I might say. So this took me as something as a surprise. And I said, look, have I committed a crime? And he said, no, you've not committed a crime. No, definitely not. I said, so why are you here then? He said, I need to check your thinking. Now, being an ex-police officer, as well as a person of some common sense and decency, I knew automatically that this was wrong. I then discovered that actually he'd breached my Article 10 human rights. So I insisted to the police that they remove this ridiculous thing called a non-crime hate incident, which doesn't involve a crime, doesn't need any hate, and doesn't need an incident. Yeah. All it needs is somebody to perceive something, and then the police report it.
So what is it you did tweet? What were these tweets? That
I said some terrible things. I said, for instance, I tweeted, I was assigned mammal at birth, but I identify as fish. Don't misspecies me. And then I used a naughty word. Now, apparently, the logic of the police was that this was stage one in a 5-step journey through murder to genocide. That was the argument of the police, Humberside Police Chief Constable, and the College of Policing.
What, so you'd start about tweeting this, and then you'd gradually build yourself up to genocide?
Yes. So without what they call necessary intervention. Necessary intervention.
Well, naturally.
That was the trajectory that I was on. I was going to go around, start insulting people and beating them up, and then murdering people, and ultimately I would be adding to the socio-economic conditions which would lead to a sort of trans Auschwitz. And so obviously the police needed, absolutely, to stop me in my tracks. Otherwise, who knew what might have happened?
So what were the practical implications on your life of having this non-hate crime thingy?
Yeah, well,
it's even impossible to say, right?
It's entirely Orwellian. Impossible to say, impossible to understand. Yeah. But nevertheless, the police love it.
But what would it have meant? So, do you have a criminal record then?
What I've got, Patrick, is a thing called a non-crime record. Now, that looks very much like a crime record because it says it's on a piece of paper called a crime report. I'm named as the suspect in the offence of hate, but I have been assured that this is a non-crime report. So what am I worried about? The other thing, of course, is that chief constables have reserved the option of revealing my non-crime hate status to potential employers for the next 6 years. And we said that is fundamentally wrong, fundamentally stupid, fundamentally dangerous. It's not remotely British, and it does not accord with any notion of justice. And the College of Policing are too stupid and morally bankrupt to have recognised that, pressed on regardless. They've spent something like £250,000 worth of taxpayers' money, deployed 650 of its staff against one man, me, and yesterday I knocked them out square. Wow, they lost.
And what does this mean? What do you think this means now for people? Because this kind of thing can happen to literally anybody. All it takes is somebody to be offended at something they've said, even if there was no intent, or even if it was a joke, even.
Well, take my friend Sarah Phillimore, who heads up Fair Cop with me. She wrote something about, I think she put my cat's a Methodist. And then somebody reported her to, I think it was South Yorkshire Police, or maybe in Wiltshire Police, saying... Sarah Phillimore says that her cat is like a Methodist. Cats defecate on people's garden. Is she saying that Methodists defecate on people's gardens? And the police said, well, that's a non-crime hate incident. Yes, we are logging that as Methodist hate.
Right, well, let's have a look at the bigger picture here now, because this is a concern. If it's a non-crime hate incident and they want to, quote, check your thinking, right? And they believe now that actually even just one person is all it might take to say something completely ludicrous and draw a ridiculous conclusion from an innocent tweet. At what point does this become the thought police?
Well, it's right. It's the thought police right the way through, and also, it's a form of the Stasi where the police encourage lunatic informers to put in malicious complaints, which they then anonymise the informant and then go after the suspect. So, for instance, in my case, I'm not allowed to say who it was who dobbed me in it. They were assigned the name Mrs. B and granted anonymity by the courts on the basis of information handed to them by the Chief Constable of Humberside, Lee Freeman, and the College of Policing, where they presented Mrs. B as this highly vulnerable individual. Well, I've since found out who Mrs. B is, and whilst I would go to prison if I said their name, what I can tell you is this, that since 2014, they have been regularly doxing people, making malicious complaints about people. In one instance, they said that the Jewish writer, Julie Burchill, they said directly to her that Hitler had the right idea and she should go to the gas chamber.
Wow.
She wrote about this in The Spectator, so you can find that. I think she perhaps does name Mrs. B. But this is the person that the police and the College of Policing tried to protect in order to present this fallacy of the perfect victim. So we couldn't know anything about their antecedents. They needed a perfect victim in order to try and force through this ridiculous binary idea that there are victims and there are suspects. She was cast, or he was cast, we're not quite sure whether he or she was cast as the perfect victim, and I was cast as the pre-genocidal suspect.
Okay. Harry, thank you very, very much.
So much.
And thank you for coming in. I'm sure it won't be the last that we see or hear of you, as Harry Miller there, of course, who's managed to overturn I think it's quite a significant court case, that really. It might have really big and quite positive connotations for freedom of speech going forward.
Yes, well...